Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by highly esteemed astrologer, author, and media personality, Nadiya Shah. So, thank you so much for joining us today. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here for this moment with you and your audience. And of course, Kepler. I love Kepler so much. And so, yes, to have this moment with all of those people out there connected to Kepler College, thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time. So, today we're talking about the power of YouTube for astrologers. And before we get to your incredible YouTube journey over the years, can you explain to us why YouTube is such an incredibly powerful platform for astrologers and astrology schools?
I think it's because people feel like they know you. And in a way, they know one part of you, of course, right? And especially those astrologers, I can say, or, I like to call what I do spiritual entrepreneurship. So whether that's tarot or healing arts or whatever the case may be, like literally people are welcoming you into their homes, into their kitchens, into their phones, and they develop a relationship with you. So there's a term for it that's becoming more and more something that more people are aware of called parasocial relationships. So it's that people feel like they know you, they develop that connection with you. And I think that's part of the power of a platform like YouTube, is that it allows that sense of a way in which you will have people that you might never meet, that you're actually reaching and helping, and whose lives are better as a result of you just putting yourself on this massively important platform.
I love that term, what you said, spiritual entrepreneurship. And you're so right about that intimacy, and you're bringing people into your homes if they're just walking around with their phone. When you're watching these videos and you're speaking to the camera and you're bringing up these different topics, talking about maybe the horoscopes or the fantastic interviews that you do, there really is, you feel that more intimate connection. I think that is part of what you're saying, the power of this medium right now in today's society.
Yeah, exactly. It's this sense of when you are looking into a camera, like right now, you and I are talking, which is wonderful, right? And so you and I are connecting, of course, but then I know that the people who are watching this as well, it's like they are participating in their own way, right? They're participating through their own perception and what they're bringing to this moment. And that can be a really powerful thing. And when you add that layer of it being something like one of the esoteric arts, like one of the ancient arts, like one of the occult arts, you bring that layer of it into it, and it reaches people on that much more of an important level. It reaches people that much more on a level where it really has the potential to shift something within them. And, of course, we hope always positively.
That's such an eloquent description. What's interesting as well is because maybe we're not tied down to our local environments anymore, because I don't, even my close friends and family, if I walk down the street and we have neighborhood parties, how many people can you speak to about astrology or other esoteric topics? So having a community where like-minded people from all around the world can tune in and connect, I think it's just absolutely wonderful. So I actually want to switch on to your incredible success over the years with your YouTube channel, and I actually have some stats here to share with the audience. So as of June 2024, you have an incredible 174,000 subscribers from all around the world. You've produced nearly 4,000 videos, and collectively you've had 45 million views, which is incredible. And I said before the recording, coming from Canada, that's actually more than the population of Canada, of all those people that you've reached over the years, which is absolutely incredible. I'd like to ask you at the beginning of this YouTube journey, what inspired you to create your YouTube channel? And did you have any goals or aims in mind at the beginning?
Way back in 2008, right? There were so few people tapping into YouTube or utilizing YouTube, and there were just a very small handful of astrologers on YouTube at the time. And I know for me, it was a lot more about, I have something to share and I want to share it. And I didn't want to sit around and wait for a gatekeeper, right? That was a big part of it as well. And I recall just feeling this sense of, well, I've got to do something. I've got to do something to empower myself. And so I jumped in. And at the time, I know I think just about every creator on YouTube, actually, it wasn't something necessarily that we were looking at to create money as an entrepreneurial tool, even. I know that different people had different motivations, but for me, I know it was so much about, I love astrology. I've got to do something. Here's something I can do. Let me jump in and let me do this. And at the time, like I said, there wasn't like a partner program. It wasn't like you were going to make money from AdSense, or all those different business elements weren't necessarily coming into play at the time. It was just, this looks fun, or this looks meaningful, or this looks like something I could do. And so many of us very early creators just kind of jumped in and did it. And the rest sort of unfolded. It kind of became a surprise I think most people who started YouTube at the time probably have been surprised to discover all the different ways in which this ended up being a tool from which an entrepreneurial business could flourish.
Well, what I really love the point you made there is the word gatekeeping. So we're not, if in the other media world or traditional media world, if it had to be TV channels or producers, or you have to go through a hierarchy or get approvals, we can literally set up, have a camera, someone sitting in the living room, just talking to the camera. As you said, there's no gatekeeper. There's no one saying this can't be done or this can't be said. And I think that's the power of it as well. It's that direct connection to the audience. And what were those early days like?
I remember at the 2012 UAC conference. And even before then, we could say the SOTA conference that used to take place, that was run by the late, great Donna Van Toen. And so many of us, especially, sort of in that Great Lakes region, we can say, of Canada and sort of I guess it would be the northern part of New York State. That was the place where astrologers kind of conglomerated once a year, was the SOTA conference. And I remember in 2009, actually doing my first interviews there, just sort of asking astrologers like, hey, can I interview you for my YouTube channel? And it was just such a new thing that people didn't really know what it was, just that somebody wanted to take what they do seriously. Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh, wow, you have 5,000 people. That's amazing. Like, yeah, of course you can interview me. And that's how it was in those first years. But when I was at the UAC conference, I remember asking a lot of astrologers, big dog astrologers, and they sat down with me, like Michael Luton, like Rick Levine, like Stephen Forrest, amazing, Richard Tarnas. And these people, I remember sitting with me, and these are people I've looked up to, right? These are people who are like, wow, like they are living legends, in my opinion. I see them and I see the legacy at that point that they'd already established and they've continued to build on. And they were telling me, you are a really good interviewer. You should keep doing this. And that meant a lot to me. And then the last day of UAC, I remember running around with my phone, my iPhone, and a little mic connected to it, kind of like this mic here connected to it. And I'm like literally interviewing people like this, right? And people are looking at me like, what is going on? What is that? Nobody knew. And afterwards, I remember, like, in the years that have followed, I have had other astrologers say to me, like, I never saw anybody do that. And when I saw you do that, it inspired me to also look at YouTube as a tool to start going in that direction. And I felt so moved by that. That meant a lot to me, that already, like, my whole intention always with all of my work was to inspire people and to give people hope. And so to be part of that in different ways for different people, especially astrologers, because I really believe that the more of us that put ourselves out there, the stronger we become as a collective. But I also know it's really hard to put yourself out there. But I'll say, I also know that once you do and you take each step does get easier and easier. Every time you share gets easier, just a little bit. And so to see how that journey has unfolded for me and for them has been amazing. But really, I just wanted to interview people I loved. And it was in 2010, I believe it was. So I finished my studies of my MA program. I'd done an MA in England. I think we're going to touch on that in a bit. But I had come back to Canada from England in 2008. And I remember it was 2010 when I had with a huge production company in Toronto. I had a development deal. And I had worked on this episode, and literally we shot the pilot 3 times. And each time they had a problem with this pilot. And I remember, like, at the time they were like, it's not, they kept saying it's not South Asian enough. It's not South Asian enough. And I'm thinking, look, I want to do a show where I'm talking about astrology and New Age spirituality and the kind of person I am. It's just so like, it's so elevated in a way, right? It's so about on the level of spirit, we're all equal and let's focus on that. But they in their minds had this idea of a South Asian Canadian sort of modern young person's lifestyle show. That's what they had in mind. And it just wasn't fitting and it just wasn't feeling right. And when I had to let that go, it was devastating, right? Like for a month, I couldn't really move because I had this dream of reaching people and it just felt like it just washed away because I couldn't be whom it is that they wanted me to be. And then that was when at the other side of it, I was like, well, what do you really want to do? I want to interview astrologers. I want to talk to them. That's what I care about. And then that's the place from which I just started asking every conference I would go to, I would say, and contact astrologists, can I interview you? Can I interview you? And those interview portions really just took off from that place of just really doing what I wanted to do. And I love that those interviews continue to reach people like yourself, watching those old school, very low resolution interviews, because that was enough back then, right? Back then, it was like you said, you could just be in your living room and you could turn on your camera and it was all good and people were happy to watch that. But there have been several phases, right, over trends, we could say, on YouTube as to what people are looking for, what's acceptable, what people are, doing aesthetically, what people are gravitating towards, editing techniques that are being utilized more and more, backgrounds that more and more people are using. And there's reasons for that. Normally it sort of fits in with some transit, normally Saturn transits. It seems like they come and go along with the Saturn transits, but that is something also that I've sort of been aware of and kept up with as well. And yeah, right now it really is that people want to see sort of like a documentary style video essay, and they want to see really good resolution. But thankfully for most of us now, your phone is 4K, right? Your phone can record on 4K. Yeah. And I always show this to people. I'll show you this because I'm traveling right now to Brazil. I have a Sag moon. I'm going to go everywhere. And I need to be able to just grab my computer and go anywhere and keep working and do what I need to do. But for example, this is the light I'm using, right? It's just a little portable light. And that's what I mean. Something as simple as this that cost, I don't even know, $20. Something as simple as a little lapel mic can be more than enough to do everything that you want to do to create video that is at the level in terms of its aesthetics, in terms of its production quality. As somebody who has a massive studio, you can do that right where you are.
You touch on a really important point. Obviously, the early days, you're one of the pioneers of the astrology YouTubes. I mean, you've got the likes of the astrology podcast, which is absolutely brilliant. Other fantastic YouTubers out there as well. But as you'll say, maybe with the Saturn transits over time in terms of structuring and the aesthetics we're looking at, even talking about something as simple as a thumbnail, what advice would you give for someone who's maybe just starting out, they're trying to build their channel, trying to build their brand, and just something, the first a shop window, that thumbnail is one of the first things that will pop out to people and click on. So over your development and the evolution of your channel, has that changed aesthetically just on the thumbnail alone?
Well, of course, like you want a thumbnail with as good resolution as possible. And again, the trends with thumbnails can change as well. I found that if you're going to put text on your thumbnail, there's like a lot of different websites out there that allow you to preview what your thumbnail is going to look like. So you just want to make sure the timestamp doesn't block some of the text, because I have made that mistake as well. And a lot of mistakes, like, it's a part of life. Like the one thing I really love with YouTube and making videos every week, and I tell this to the students at Kepler, I say, every video is another chance. Every video is a chance to start again. Every video is a chance to build on what worked before and to improve what it is that you felt didn't work as well. And so every video is you being able to move forward and leave behind the stuff that you wish was different, but also to carry forward the stuff that you liked about what was before. And so that includes with your thumbnail as well. So experiment with different types of thumbnails, of course. Right now, what I've noticed as of late, the trend is to have like you cut out. And it's very easy to do that with a background remover on a program like Canva, for example, where you can just remove the background and then you put something in there with text or whatever, but you are basically like your image is kind of floating on top of a sort of a colored background with all that text and things like that, or maybe a background of stars or something where it's very obvious you're not floating in space. It's very obvious an image has been put there. But that's right now. And so it'll be interesting to see what the thumbnail trend is going to be. And then, of course, you have to consider like your genre, what message you're getting out, like what are you trying to express with your thumbnail? And like, for example, the font style, doing like a Batman, comic book font style gives a very different feeling and a very different impression than doing like a refined script type of style, right? And using muted pastels versus primary colors. And so all of these, I know in the beginning, you're kind of thinking about it, you're thinking about who you are and what you're bringing. And that's part of the excitement. But the great thing is, once you put the foundation in place, once that's there and it's strong, you can build on that for many, many years to come. And, I remember there's this theory, this business theory that I teach in the class as well, where I talk about how in the beginning, you are working a lot of hours, you're pouring so much of yourself, but there are like evolutions to an entrepreneurial endeavor, including a spiritual entrepreneurial endeavor. And I actually think of the course, I know we call it YouTube for Astrologers, but I think of it as spiritual entrepreneurship. That might be like a better way to understand it. But there are going to be like different phases as you go along in that. And that includes in terms of how much you need to bring to the business, how much you need to give to the business in order to have it grow. And at the beginning, it is a whole lot of hours, like everything you have to give. And I know I did that, especially in the beginning, when I was working, like making money and living below the poverty line type of money, right? Doing so much of what I do now, back then, 17 years ago, doing it for free is what I was doing. But it was what I did then that ended up serving as a strong foundation. And from there, as you go along with the different phases of entrepreneurship, you can, pull back your time, but you understand what it is that you uniquely can bring in, where you can bring in someone else to help you, and these different ways in which to continue to grow, but move towards a greater balance where you can give less time, but you can have great results because you already put in the time. Very Saturnian, isn't it?
Wonderful advice as well. And I was picking out of your story before the importance of being authentic to yourself. Now, how important, obviously, as astrologers, with the students that you work with, for them to look at their own chart, see where their strengths are, and to work with those. There's many different personalities out there. You have such a wonderful, energetic personality. I love watching your videos. But I say to students as well, even if you're maybe a bit more reserved, you're not particularly social, that's a great style as well. If you're just there in a very, basic room and you're just very matter of fact, and that's the way you speak, I think that's a wonderful style in itself. You don't have to be this all-encompassing, out there personality. There's so many different layers to work with, and if that's in your chart, just play to your strengths and where you work. And is that what you found with students over the years, or what's been your experience?
Absolutely. That is a wonderful point. Thank you for that, because that is exactly it. Like, understanding your own chart can really help you to understand how you are going to go about not only creating your channel, but what kind of relationship you want to have with your channel and your audience as well, what your intention is, what you are bringing. All of this ends up being incredibly valuable to know. I mean, the point of astrology in a lot of ways is self-knowledge, of course. And so, like I was saying in the first class, yes, we have like electional astrology. So, some of the basics to choosing a chart that's going to be right for you in terms of the actual channel and launching the channel. So, the best time to start an endeavor for me, it was like literally the moment I launched my website. That was the beginning of my business. And that has been the foundational chart from which I've built since then, always. But when you look at, there's that layer of the election, but then there's the layer of who you are, right? What you need. And so for me, like I was saying, I keep saying Sag moon. I mean, I think a lot of people know I have a Sag moon more than they know I'm an Aquarius sun, right? And there's, but I have a lot of like Capricorn Saturnian energy as well, which is why I think I was really able to like persevere for this long, because very often I've also found like it's just who kind of does stick around long enough, right? Really is what ends up really being the thing. Like, can you hang in there? But don't hang into something that isn't working. Of course, you have to be willing to be adaptable and change. Like, all the modalities matter, right? When you're doing an entrepreneurial endeavor. So fixed is the determination, like nothing's going to take you off your path. But then the mutable is the ability to adapt and say, okay, this isn't really working. Let me flow over here. Let me see, maybe this is it. Because I know over the years how many different things I've tried to kind of figure out what it is that actually works. And then, of course, you need the cardinal to even get started. And so all the modalities sort of come into play as part of this as well.
I also want to ask you, in your experience, about the importance of telling students not to compare themselves to others. Now, the Kepler channel that I developed over the last 3 years, obviously we're a very modest channel, but my philosophy at the very, very beginning was, if I can get through to at least one person and they came away from the video with something new or that they enjoyed, that's good enough for me. Reaching out to one person, I know we're both Aquarians, we both enjoy sharing knowledge to as many people as possible, but what are your thoughts, or telling students, what if they only get 10 views in this video, or 12 views, and they're comparing themselves to others or comparing their development to maybe peers? What advice would you give for people not to dwell or be too despondent about those kind of things?
Yeah, it's hard. Of course, it's hard. And I get it. And I think that as part of spiritual entrepreneurship, and because one class is all about the technicalities of actually making the video and the things you need to know about video editing, about lighting, about the microphone and things like that. So we actually talk about that. And then in the next class, the third class, it's like loving feedback, right? So if you want to, you can present your video and we all give our feedback. And it's always something that students find really nerve-wracking, but then they always feel really grateful for it afterwards, because it really is about being in a group that wants to see you succeed, that wants the best for you. And so part of that is figuring out the right platform for you as well, because you're using social media. Social media is so powerful because it literally allows you to connect with the literal world. And you can figure out the best platform for you. And that might not be YouTube. And so YouTube is great for long form content, like the kind of stuff I like to do, which is like, I love to dive. I feel like it's a dive. The podcast I do every weekend is about like just looking at what's happening that weekend and then just going, on a swim together and looking at it from different perspectives, psychological, mythological. It's about a story, but it's about ideas that I hope will inspire people and lift people. But that's me. That's my intention. I've seen people do very, very well on a platform like TikTok or doing Instagram reels. They all have their own energy, these different platforms, right? And so, especially with Pluto in Aquarius now at the very beginning, we know that there's going to be even more ways in which social media platforms are going to start to rise more and more. And we're likely to see the rise of very dominant platforms coming up ahead. And so stay aware, because you look at the platforms now, maybe it's Threads or X that is actually your platform. Maybe you're better just sharing short ideas, and that could be enough to reach people as well. So it's good to stay open and experiment, and it's also good to really try everything, and then also to know yourself and to figure out the right platform for you. But I get it. YouTube might not be for everybody. I have a grand trine in air. Oh, I could just talk and talk and talk, right? That's like the easiest thing to do. I write books. Recently, my 6th book came out. And literally, like, I know when I'm home, basically, when I'm home, because I people, again, who watch me, I have a Sagittarius moon. I love to travel. And so right now I happen to be in Brazil. That might be kind of obvious right now, but it's like when I travel, there's a lot more work-life balance. But when I'm home and I'm with my parents, like I am, I go home like 3 or 4 times a year for like 2 months at a time. And when I'm home, there's really not a lot to do in South Central Ontario. Like, to me, it might as well be in the middle of nowhere, other than write. Like, writing ends up being the thing because it's like so easy and so natural. But that's not everybody. Not everybody is working with air energy. Not everybody is thinking along those lines necessarily. There are literally thousands of ways to share what you do and to create a spiritually oriented entrepreneurial endeavor and have it be successful. And to me, successful means that you can provide for yourself and to those to whom you are responsible, and that you feel connected to a sense of purpose while you're doing it.
Such eloquent, beautiful statements and great advice for everybody watching and the students that you work with. And that's a really good point. Just stick into the social platforms you're comfortable with. And even if you just like one, for me personally, I just like YouTube. Like you said, long form. I love doing interviews with the likes of Anthony Lewis, Rick Levine. More in depth, of course, you've got the likes of an astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. I can't go that long. That's too far for me, but the information is so rich.
Oh my God. Well, look, can we just say, I just want to say, Chris Brennan is like in a league of his own, of course. He is in a league of his own. In a million ways, he's in a league of his own. He is just so brilliant, and he has that ability to just really stay with whomever he's speaking with, or to share his ideas and to stay with it. Absolutely. and to bring people along. Can you hold people through how long the video is? And he has the ability to do that as well, to stay interesting, to share new ideas enough that people want to stay with him throughout that extended period of time. So it's, what he does is just so, so special. It's in a league of its own.
Absolutely.
But the great thing is that you can find what your league is. Whoever you are out there, you have something that is uniquely your own as well. And you can find it. You really can. Now, a lot of people don't know, but Chris Brennan, I remember interviewing him and meeting him like years ago. I think it was at the 2012 conference that I actually met him as well, of UAC. But, he was out there from that time. He was like somebody that was reaching people. He was a popular speaker. He was selling out workshops. So he'd already sort of established his unique brilliance out there already. And so it becomes really important. And this is something I really want to stress, because something you said earlier, it's important not to compare yourself. You are going to have your own unique voice. There can be a million astrologers, and that's okay. But nobody is going to have the connection to the sky that you specifically do. And no one's going to be able to communicate that in a way that you specifically do. And the more, I remember seeing this in an Oprah interview way back in the day, she said that split second you take to sort of turn here and see what the other guy is doing, it slows you right down. It makes you just go right off track. And so it becomes really important to stay focused on yourself and where you're going. And in the beginning, you can be inspired by other people, and especially inspired to look at what are other astrologers doing aesthetically. What are they doing in terms of their editing style? How are they working out their lighting? How are they formatting their videos? That's great, right? And see what resonates with you. But first of all, you cannot compare yourself to someone who's been doing it for a really, really long time.
Every once in a while, we get those trolls. So what are your advice to those people starting out? Because we can receive 1,000 compliments, and that one negative comment is going to stay in our mind. So what advice do you give for students for those where the trolls start coming in?
A few advices I could give. And it's so interesting you asked. First of all, this is the number one question I'm always asked, actually, about how do you deal with trolls and stuff. And I know a lovely person, and she, when I travel, I always say to people, hey, if you're where I am, reach out. I would love to meet you. And so I met this person, and she was telling me about how somebody sent her really mean, and she's really at the beginning. I mean, like a few hundred people, right? She's at the very beginning. And she talked about like how much it was hurtful to her and things like that. And so I would say, how do you deal with trolls? How do you deal with bullies? You don't. Like, it's really that simple. You don't. Because again, that little bit of this, right? And the whole point is to touch on that child part of you. And ultimately, it really has nothing to do with you. And their motivations, their psychological reasons, in a way, really are none of your business as well. Of course, we can go there. We can talk about, why they do what they do, but what does it even matter? What I would say is, especially because so many astrologers, now this isn't necessarily the case, but a lot of us are sensitive souls. And it's that sensitivity that allows us to be good at what we do, that allows us to connect with people. And so what it is to set up structures so that you're coming across that as little as possible. And so I remember at the very beginning, the very, very first videos I ever posted, I got this lesson because people would comment, and I would, like, in good faith, interact with those comments. And I realized that these people are not interested in actually having a dialogue. It isn't about that. It isn't about exchanging information and viewpoints. It really is about just poking, just seeing what they could get, because it gives them something for some reason.
You make a really good distinction there between the ones that are trying to antagonize. Because I've seen some comments and I'm thinking, you know what, the constructive criticism is fine. As I started the channel, I've got no media training. I don't like public speaking. I'm quite an introvert, actually. So some of the comments came in and I thought, some of them were constructive. And I thought, I'm going to take some of those ideas and I'm trying to work on it. So I love, because there's a distinction, as you're making there, between the antagonistic, the ones who are poking, versus the ones that go, maybe you want to switch that up a bit. So I like where you're going with that.
Okay, Caleb. Okay, let me just say, you have a grand trine in air like I do. I mean, how is it that you're an introvert? What are you saying? You have a Libra rising? You told me? Yeah.
Conversations like this, I love. Planets are below the horizon. So yeah, Mercury and Pisces as well. It's not a strong Mercury. I've never enjoyed public speaking, but I love conversations like this. So actually going back to your point before, do where your strengths lie. And even if you don't like being up in front physically in front of hundreds or thousands of people, if you enjoy these conversational styles, do things that work for you. And that's why I love your advice that you gave at the beginning.
Yeah. And I would also say, like, a wonderful tool that I have is other people. And so whether that, especially in the beginning, just might be a friend who will go through your your comments and go through your email and just, delete or put away stuff that you don't need to see. So that can be very valuable as well. And then they say, okay, it's done. And then you go in there and you do it. And then, you're only going to interact with comments and emails like once a week, let's say, or twice a week. You could hire somebody to work for you for an hour, a week. And just that is their job, to do that, to go through comments, to go through whatever. But it is very, 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 very few. It's like few and far in between, I'll tell you. And it is, 99.99% is extremely loving. You would be amazed how loving people are, how encouraging people are. And so, yeah, I also think that, there've been a lot of studies and like who succeeds and who doesn't. And I remember in Psychology Today years ago, I wish I still had a link to that article, but they said that one of the things that really makes a distinction is an "I'll show you" attitude. An "I'll show you" attitude. And so I would invite you to cultivate an "I'll show you" attitude. Like, yeah, nothing is to get in the way of what it is that you are here in this lifetime to do. And maybe utilizing social media to share who you are, to inspire people, it might be part of that. And you being on your path is really the thing that matters.
Absolutely wonderful, beautiful advice. And it goes back to what you were saying before, the beginning of your journey, the perseverance and the persistence. Fantastic. So lastly, Nadiya, thank you so much for today. Can you tell us when the class is starting? I believe it's a 5-week course beginning July 16th. And once a year you do this. Is this correct?
Yes, once a year, only at Kepler College do I teach a business class. And Kepler College, I have so much admiration and respect for. And way back in the day, as a baby professional astrologer, looking at Kepler College, being such at the forefront, having like the greatest astrologers teaching at Kepler, it was like a dream that, oh my God, I hope one day I'm like good enough and people want me like that. Da, da, da. And so now to be on the faculty, and I think this is the 4th or 5th year that I'm teaching this course, which is also incredible to have that relationship with Kepler. I'm so proud of that. And so it is for that relationship, for the importance of what Kepler represents, like excellence in astrological education, but also how rewarding it is to actually like mentor people, is why I keep coming back every summer. I teach this once a year only at Kepler, which is the business side of things. So again, it's a 5-week course. It's called YouTube for Astrologers, but it is essentially spiritual entrepreneurship. You don't need to be an astrologer necessarily. If you are, that's great. I've had like certain years, everybody's an astrologer. Other years, like out of the 25 students, because we always limit it to 25 students, and it always sells out, always. The class always sells out. So I always advise people, like, if you know that this might be something for you, then you really should think about signing up sooner rather than later, because it always sells out, because we always end up with a waiting list. And so the thing that I really love about this as well is that mentorship. As much as you bring, as much as you ask for guidance, for membership, for feedback, is as much as you'll get. There is that dedicated space only for students. It's on a platform called Moodle, and at keplerclasses.org, I think is the website. So once you're registered, you get access to that. And it's in that space specifically that we all interact with each other in that small group setting. You get the feedback. The live classes that take place are supposed to be 90 minutes a class. I always go over time. As you just saw, you and I both have grand trines in air. Yes, I can talk. I can go on, but I also like
love it. I've heard from students, they go, your class is one of the best they've ever taken, and no wonder it fills out within days. So you're right, Nadiya. Anyone watching this, if you're really gun-ho and really want to get in, certainly sign up as soon as possible. Fantastic.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love to welcome you. And the group that comes together, it's always whom it is that is meant to be together in that experience. And it's been so rewarding to see astrologers and new age practitioners go on to create really successful businesses of their own, and to see them sharing in different ways, to interact with them online. It's been such a joy. So, and so many people, you know, on my channel now, I love having guest videos, and I have people who come in and for 3 months, they'll do like full moon guidance videos, or they'll do, you know, all these different things. If I step away, they might do like a monthly video horoscope or whatever. And a lot of those are former students, not necessarily, but a lot of them are former students that I met at Kepler College who were my students, and they impressed me. I just loved it. And or maybe in the moment I saw, oh, wow, okay, there's something here. But then I saw them develop it over a period of time on Instagram, on YouTube. And, you know, when I saw like, wow, okay, yeah, this person's really ready, then I started bugging them and saying, hey, come make a video.
And Michael Luton said to you, you've got to do it because you're brilliant. And it must be beautiful to see how others develop and bring them onto your channel as well. One of the best channels out there, astrology or otherwise. Absolutely fantastic. So Nadiya, thank you so much for sharing your innate wisdom and your advice in this video. And we'll leave the links to the course below this video in the description and comment boxes. And of course, sign up as soon as possible, because that will fly off like hotcakes. But thank you, Nadiya, so much for a wonderful conversation.
That is such a British thing to say, fly out like hotcakes.
Like
I love
hotcakes.
it. That is the perfect note on which to end this wonderful, fun interview. So thank you. You are a wonderful interviewer as well. It was fun.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.